There's a certain moment when a storyline slips from messy to meaningless, a moment when shock turns into sighs, and fans aren't asking, what's going to happen next? They're asking, how much longer are we doing this? And for Andrei and Elizabeth, that moment had clearly arrived. At first, it was electric, a human game of tug-of-war between blunt force ambition and a family that refused to budge. Andrei versus Elizabeth's siblings, in-laws, finances, even real estate ventures. It was conflict in high definition. But now, it's the same blowout just served cold, over a new dinner. Was it just lazy storytelling, or did TLC finally realize what the fans had been saying for years? Because make no mistake, fans were loud about it. Early seasons gave us tension with stakes. Now we're stuck in a sitcom rerun where the punchline's always yelling, and the script forgot to change. One episode it's Elizabeth crying as Andrei storms off mid-argument. Next, it's her crying again, only this time she's leaving a barbecue. You could swap out the background and nobody would know. The same players, the same explosive setup, the same emotionless resolutions that reset just in time for the next breakdown. And week after week, viewers began to feel it in their bones, that creeping sense of déjà vu that pulls the heart out of drama. Because storytelling thrives on evolution. And this was running in circles. Retention booster. If you start predicting each argument before it begins, the show's not exciting anymore, it's exhausting. Reddit threads lit up with comments like, "We've had this fight since season 5. Are they stuck in a time loop? I love Elizabeth, but I'm tired of watching her go through the exact same thing every season." At this point, it feels like emotional karaoke. We've heard all this already. Elizabeth used to feel like the glue holding it all together. But lately, that glue seems brittle, cracking under pressure that never lets up. Andrei's temper became so expected that fans stopped reacting to it. And you could tell TLC knew this too. Remember how the music cues used to swell when he raised his voice? Now they're quiet, chopped, trimmed down to brief cuts. They aren't showcasing him anymore. They're containing him. It's subtle but lethal. TLC didn't remove Andrei and Elizabeth. They let their narrative overheat until it burned itself out, and fans walked away without even realizing they'd lost interest. And that fan interest is precious. Once gone, it rarely comes back. Viewers were no longer emotionally invested, they were emotionally drained. Every repeated fight only widened the distance. And instead of reigniting the spark, producers kept reaching for the same gas can, more shouting, more family tension, more birthday parties hijacked by someone feeling disrespected. If you can't tell if it's this week's episode or a flashback from 2021, you're not watching a drama anymore. You're watching loops, and TV viewers are way smarter than that. Retention booster. When the fans feel insulted by lazy scripting, that doesn't just break immersion, it breaks loyalty. And here's the sting, it didn't have to be this way. Andrei and Elizabeth actually had complex layers: culture clashes, immigration stress, gender dynamics, career tension, parenting fatigue, but none of those threads got space to breathe. Every time a new dimension could have opened up, it got hijacked by another family dinner disaster. Again. And the more this cycle repeated, the less fans cared. Fatigue set in, not because people hated them, but because they wanted more from them. More honesty, more awareness, more emotional growth. Andrei refusing to budge while Elizabeth pleaded for calm wasn't new anymore. It was just sad, especially when nothing ever changed. TLC could have shifted gears. But it looks like they gambled on chaos and didn't notice the audience was ready for closure. Remember that infamous blow-up at Chuck's house, the one where Elizabeth ran off crying, again, while Andrei said, "I'm not gonna kiss there, eh?" The episode had all the ingredients for classic 90-day drama. But fans online, they were colder than ever. Multiple comments racked up likes by saying things like, "This isn't a storyline, it's a trauma treadmill," and perhaps the strongest, "These people need a therapist, not cameras." And that hit deep, not because it's cruel, but because viewers were starting to feel complicit, like they were watching someone spiral with no safety net. And shock jock entertainment only works if the audience can laugh without guilt. TLC sensed the shift and they moved quickly. Suddenly, less screen time, no big fights in the trailers, fewer confrontations. Andrei's rants were trimmed. The family scenes, given a B-story vibe, sometimes even fully skipped in favor of lighter, newer couples. TLC was testing viewer engagement, trimming fat, and the numbers told them what to keep. And guess who didn't make the cut? Retention booster. TLC didn't just lose patience, Sarah. They saw the viewers already had, and quietly followed their lead. The formula had expired. The couple once guaranteed to trend every Monday was now background noise, like an old ringtone nobody uses anymore. And that, right there, is when you know your arc is done. When fans no longer root for growth, they root for the story to end. So was it laziness, or was it damage control? TLC likely knew the public wouldn't forgive another season of emotional chaos without payoff. Stretching this drama had become more of a liability than a thrill. Too many cycles. Too many scenes where Elizabeth was either crying, cornered, or completely exasperated. No resolution, no healing, just rinse and replay. Even the plot felt like a recycle bin. Let's be honest, if you've seen one Andrei versus Becky argument, you've basically seen all of them. Every family barbecue turns into a battlefield. Every truce ends in someone storming out. And there's always background tension sprinkled like seasoning but never resolved. Eventually, fans called it what it was: scripted repetition. And feeling tricked is worse than feeling bored. And here's what made it sting the most. We weren't asking for perfection, just progress. But instead of emotional closure, TLC gave us condensed clips. Instead of vulnerability, we got volume. And instead of character insight, we got yet another passive-aggressive toast on the back patio. Fans deserve better, and they said as much. And now, TLC is listening, not with comments but with edits. The shift is visible. Andrei and Elizabeth no longer drive episodes the way they used to. Their stories wind down mid-episode. Third acts now belong to Loren and Alexei, or Jasmine's chaos, or whoever still moves the engagement needle. And maybe that's the cost of repetition. If your fight becomes predictable, your exit becomes forgettable. Because no couple, no matter how fiery, can survive when the fans stop asking, what happens next? And start asking, didn't we already see this? Coming up in Act 3, we're looking into how TLC intentionally phases out worn-out storylines without ever telling the audience. What happens behind production doors when a couple outlives their narrative use? The mechanics are slick and more shady than you think. Stay right here, because what you're about to hear explains why some exits never get goodbyes and which current couples might be next. There's a difference between a couple leaving the show and being silently erased. And if you've been watching long enough, you already know, TLC talks when the cameras roll, but when someone's contract ends, the volume drops to zero. The question isn't if TLC phased them out, it's how they've done it again. And again, without ever saying a word. Andrei and Elizabeth didn't get a finale, they didn't get a reunion meltdown. No send-off scene, no dramatic handshake or blown-out fight to bookend their arc. They got edited out of relevance. And the fans who once watched their every move, they were barely given time to realize it had already happened. But that's not just forgetfulness. That's design. Because behind the scenes, TLC has quietly mastered the slow phase-out, a pampered form of cancel culture where production never has to admit a story went stale. Instead of firing people publicly, they downshift, clip by clip, promo by promo, until one day a fan on Reddit asks, wait, are they even in this season? And no one has a clear answer. That's how they get rid of people. Retention booster. Sometimes the cleanest cut isn't an edit, it's silence wrapped in plausible deniability. And we've seen this before, not just once, not just with Andrei and Elizabeth, but with multiple couples who quietly faded after audience trust cracked or drama lost its shine. Remember when Karine and Paul suddenly weren't in the main edit after years of whirlwind chaos? Or how Mohammed and Danielle's overload of tabloid heat eventually cooled into zero screen time and no formal update? TLC never says it, but fans feel it. And it's always the same trick: shift the focus. Recycle the best of their past scenes for a flashback montage. Sneak in a quick confessional. Then introduce 3 new couples and flood the YouTube trailers. 1 week later, the old favorites vanished, like it was never part of the marketing at all. And here's why it works. Reality TV at its peak makes the audience feel invested, like they're in a parasocial relationship. You're watching couples grow, break, rebuild, collapse. You pick sides. You defend people in comment sections. It's emotional, so when a favorite disappears, fans want answers. TLC doesn't give them. They give a baby promo with 2 new couples and a flashing montage of chaos. The old tension is deliberately drowned out by fresh noise. No backlash, no explanation, because they know better than to pull attention to a decision that might trigger fan outrage. So they wait for the audience to forget, but it's not amnesia, it's overload by design. Retention booster. When a show floods you with new tension, it's not because the old stuff resolved. It's because it quietly collapsed, and production can't afford to say it out loud. With Andrei and Elizabeth, all signs point to a classic TLC quiet cut. It starts with fewer preview clips, then shorter takes in each episode. Next, a reduced presence in trailers. Their names stop trending in hashtags. Their photos drop off official Instagram posts. Even the show's opening montage replaces them with newer blood. And by the time a viewer realizes what's missing, the season's already moved on. Fans did notice, though, especially the ones who have been around since season 5. The questions started small. Where's their segment this week? Then it turned sharper. Are Andrei and Elizabeth even on this season? Are they filming? Did something happen off camera? No answers. Even social media stayed quiet. The couple barely posted. TLC accounts never mentioned their arc. And when clips did surface, they felt like background noise. A side soup in the buffet of bigger, newer dramas. But why not announce it? Why not close their storyline properly? Because there's only one thing TLC hates more than a scandal: a public firing. Going public with a breakup between network and cast risks a lawsuit and bad press. It invites side-by-sides, receipts, fan theories. By phasing quietly, they dodge the drama and let viewership trends speak for themselves. It's emotionless, but it's effective. They know exactly when fan empathy flips to fatigue. And by then, there's no apology that makes it better. The safest path? Let the cast walk themselves out. Let the spotlight dim naturally. Make the exit seem mutual, even when it isn't. And in Andrei and Elizabeth's case, that's exactly what it looks like. Hidden in all the chaos were indicators. Small production moves that only longtime watchers could spot. Andrei wasn't in the preview for the midseason fight, even though he was there. Only Loren and Alexei got pre-release clips. Elizabeth's segments were shrunk to emotional filler, and their big fight stopped getting suspense music. Instead, they just cut straight to the next couple. That's not an accident. That's reduction. TLC didn't remove the conflict. They removed the emotional spotlight. And that's the network's cleanest trick: keep the couple technically on screen, but dull the edits until nobody cares anymore. Retention booster. It's not that they vanished, Sarah, it's that TLC blurred them until the audience looked past them. So what we're seeing now isn't just one couple fading out. It's a pattern, a strategy. Because when your brand becomes fatigue, you're not dangerous, you're disposable. Old cast members who have worn out their drama get the same treatment nearly every time. Re-edited, reduced, phased, until one day they're gone. And the audience isn't angry. The audience is okay with it. Because here's where things get painful. Reality TV shows thrive until fans realize they're not being treated as an audience, they're being managed. Told what to care about, what scenes to engage with, who the favorites are. And when that illusion breaks, TLC doesn't double down. They pivot. They bet on amnesia over honesty. They count on emotional burnout instead of resolution. And that's exactly what they used on Andrei and Elizabeth. TLC didn't cancel them. They made our interest cancel itself. No mess, no public feuding, no finale fire, just silence. Fans tuned in for a storm and got a rerun, and then nothing at all. And the leftover viewers are still wondering, did we witness a natural goodbye? Or a producer-engineered fade-out dressed up as one? That question, left unanswered. And that might be the network's new favorite trick. Because in reality TV, the only thing more powerful than a big scandal is a clean erasure. Coming up next, what happens when silence gives way to real emotion, and one couple dares to take the spotlight that Andrei and Elizabeth left behind? Loren and Alexei didn't just fill the void. They reshaped what it means to be interesting on screen and changed the energy of the show without even raising their voices. The shift was subtle, but fans noticed. And TLC? Oh, they doubled down hard. Stay with me, because what happens next flips the whole franchise upside down. There's a difference between a couple leaving the show and being silently erased. And if you've been watching long enough, you already know. TLC talks when the cameras roll, but when someone's contract ends, the volume drops to zero. The question isn't if TLC phased them out, it's how they've done it again, and again, without ever saying a word. Andrei and Elizabeth didn't get a finale. They didn't get a reunion meltdown. No send-off scene, no dramatic handshake or blown-out fight to bookend their arc. They got edited out of relevance. And the fans who once watched their every move, they were barely given time to realize it had already happened. But that's not just forgetfulness. That's design. Because behind the scenes, TLC has quietly mastered the slow phase-out, a pampered form of cancel culture where production never has to admit a story went stale. Instead of firing people publicly, they downshift, clip by clip, promo by promo, until one day a fan on Reddit asks, wait, are they even in this season? And no one has a clear answer. That's how they get rid of people. Retention booster. Sometimes the cleanest cut isn't an edit, it's silence wrapped in plausible deniability. And we've seen this before, not just once, not just with Andrei and Elizabeth, but with multiple couples who quietly faded after audience trust cracked or drama lost its shine. Remember when Karine and Paul suddenly weren't in the main edit after years of whirlwind chaos? Or how Mohammed and Danielle's overload of tabloid heat eventually cooled into zero screen time and no formal update? TLC never says it, but fans feel it. And it's always the same trick: shift the focus. Recycle the best of their past scenes for a flashback montage. Sneak in a quick confessional. Then introduce 3 new couples and flood the YouTube trailers. 1 week later, the old favorites vanished, like it was never part of the marketing at all. And here's why it works. Reality TV at its peak makes the audience feel invested, like they're in a parasocial relationship. You're watching couples grow, break, rebuild, collapse. You pick sides. You defend people in comment sections. It's emotional, so when a favorite disappears, fans want answers. TLC doesn't give them. They give a baby promo with 2 new couples and a flashing montage of chaos. The old tension is deliberately drowned out by fresh noise. No backlash, no explanation, because they know better than to pull attention to a decision that might trigger fan outrage. So they wait for the audience to forget, but it's not amnesia, it's overload by design. Retention booster. When a show floods you with new tension, it's not because the old stuff resolved. It's because it quietly collapsed, and production can't afford to say it out loud. With Andrei and Elizabeth, all signs point to a classic TLC quiet cut. It starts with fewer preview clips, then shorter takes in each episode. Next, a reduced presence in trailers. Their names stop trending in hashtags. Their photos drop off official Instagram posts. Even the show's opening montage replaces them with newer blood. And by the time a viewer realizes what's missing, the season's already moved on. Fans did notice, though, especially the ones who have been around since season 5. The questions started small. Where's their segment this week? Then it turned sharper. Are Andrei and Elizabeth even on this season? Are they filming? Did something happen off camera? No answers. Even social media stayed quiet. The couple barely posted. TLC accounts never mentioned their arc. And when clips did surface, they felt like background noise. A side soup in the buffet of bigger, newer dramas. But why not announce it? Why not close their storyline properly? Because there's only one thing TLC hates more than a scandal: a public firing. Going public with a breakup between network and cast risks a lawsuit and bad press. It invites side-by-sides, receipts, fan theories. By phasing quietly, they dodge the drama and let viewership trends speak for themselves. It's emotionless, but it's effective. They know exactly when fan empathy flips to fatigue. And by then, there's no apology that makes it better. The safest path? Let the cast walk themselves out. Let the spotlight dim naturally. Make the exit seem mutual, even when it isn't. And in Andrei and Elizabeth's case, that's exactly what it looks like. Hidden in all the chaos were indicators. Small production moves that only longtime watchers could spot. Andrei wasn't in the preview for the midseason fight, even though he was there. Only Loren and Alexei got pre-release clips. Elizabeth's segments were shrunk to emotional filler, and their big fight stopped getting suspense music. Instead, they just cut straight to the next couple. That's not an accident. That's reduction. TLC didn't remove the conflict. They removed the emotional spotlight. And that's the network's cleanest trick: keep the couple technically on screen, but dull the edits until nobody cares anymore. Retention booster. It's not that they vanished, Sarah, it's that TLC blurred them until the audience looked past them. So what we're seeing now isn't just one couple fading out. It's a pattern, a strategy. Because when your brand becomes fatigue, you're not dangerous, you're disposable. Old cast members who have worn out their drama get the same treatment nearly every time. Re-edited, reduced, phased, until one day they're gone. And the audience isn't angry. The audience is okay with it. Because here's where things get painful. Reality TV shows thrive until fans realize they're not being treated as an audience, they're being managed. Told what to care about, what scenes to engage with, who the favorites are. And when that illusion breaks, TLC doesn't double down. They pivot. They bet on amnesia over honesty. They count on emotional burnout instead of resolution. And that's exactly what they used on Andrei and Elizabeth. TLC didn't cancel them. They made our interest cancel itself. No mess, no public feuding, no finale fire, just silence. Fans tuned in for a storm and got a rerun, and then nothing at all. And the leftover viewers are still wondering, did we witness a natural goodbye, or a producer-engineered fade-out dressed up as one? That question, left unanswered. And that might be the network's new favorite trick. Because in reality TV, the only thing more powerful than a big scandal is a clean erasure. Coming up next, what happens when silence gives way to real emotion, and one couple dares to take the spotlight that Andrei and Elizabeth left behind? Loren and Alexei didn't just fill the void. They reshaped what it means to be interesting on screen and changed the energy of the show without even raising their voices. The shift was subtle, but fans noticed. And TLC. Oh, they doubled down hard. Stay with me, because what happens next flips the whole franchise upside down. While one couple fizzled out screaming over the dinner table, another was quietly becoming the emotional center of the show. And no one, not even TLC, saw it coming. They didn't fight for attention. They didn't throw wine or flip couches. They just showed up for each other. And somehow, that was what we needed most. So how did a low-drama couple quietly become the backbone of the franchise, and somehow outshine the chaos? Enter Loren and Alexei. When they first joined the 90-Day Fiancé universe, they weren't flashy. They had cultural challenges, of course, worries about visas, family pressures, identity differences, but from jump it was clear, these two weren't playing to the cameras, they were playing to each other. And over time, fans slowly stopped glossing over their screen time and started leaning in. Because in a show built on tension, Loren and Alexei were offering truth, not perfection, not performative peace. Something better, relatable exhaustion, raw vulnerability, and the kind of support that can't be edited into existence. Especially as their marriage grew, and their family did too. The moment everything shifted, Loren's postpartum journey. You could see the difference. She wasn't trying to be TV strong or social media polished. She was tired, hormonal, scared, some days even angry, and instead of downplaying it for likability, she leaned in, on camera. No glam filters, no catchphrases, just real life, And Alexei's soft-spoken, kind-eyed, always calm didn't play the hero. He was the partner, waking up for the babies, helping her talk through things, balancing his own stress while quietly making sure she was okay. That's when viewers started saying, wait, this feels different. It wasn't a moment, it was a mood shift, one slow, genuine, experimental scene at a time. Retention booster. In an ocean of noise, Loren and Alexei's whisper hit louder than every scream. What made them stick wasn't that they avoided conflict. It's that they faced it together. From whether they should have another kid, to navigating postpartum depression, sleep schedules, and identity shifts, every argument started softly and ended in progress. We're not used to seeing that, not on this show. Loren's confessionals hit hard because you've either been in her shoes or you knew someone who has. The insecurity about changing body image. The guilt over losing patience with your kids. The fear that marriage after parenthood might collapse a little. It was all there, honest, hesitant, fully human. And the real kicker, she never needed the editing room to make her look good. Because the vulnerability was the story, Alexei, meanwhile, became the internet's quiet husband goal, not because he was perfect, not because he agreed to everything, but because his love wasn't loud. It was consistent, patient, calm in the storm. Fans didn't just watch his actions, they watched how safe she felt in his presence. And that's the kind of chemistry you can't fake through production. Retention booster. Suddenly, TLC didn't need to cut to chaos. Loren and Alexei were pulling ratings with empathy. Imagine that. As other couples fell apart, broke down, or refused to evolve, Loren and Alexei were doing something radical, building a quietly functional marriage in real time. And the fans noticed. Their clips started topping the engagement stats. Fan pages filled up with comments like, I cried when Loren opened up about her struggle with anxiety. That was so real. I see myself in her. I didn't expect to, but here we are. Watching Alexei help with the baby without turning it into a moment was everything. Compare that with couples whose drama exhausted viewers. No one felt drained watching Loren and Alexei. They left people softened, encouraged, a little more hopeful. And TLC? Oh, they clocked it immediately. They started moving their scenes later in the episode, prime emotional slot. They got more trailer time. Their Instagram shares doubled. Loren's vulnerability plus Alexei's emotional steadiness became a perfect cocktail, reliable and refreshing. It was the anti-Andrei formula, and fans drank it up. While other couples battled to stay relevant through tension, Loren and Alexei kept getting screen time for being real people with real problems. And yet, this wasn't some shiny influencer marriage. They still fought, still disagreed. There were tears, fears, sharp edges in postpartum nights, but none of it ever felt like posturing for camera time, because the honesty didn't feel curated, it felt earned. Retention booster. There's a reason fans trust Loren's tears. They don't feel scripted. They feel like ours. And that trust became currency. It bought them brand deals, but it also bought them goodwill. So when Loren expressed fear over pregnancy complications or cried about colic at 3 a.m., fans didn't cringe or roll eyes. They sat with her, not as followers, but as people. That depth gave them something rarer than drama, staying power. Because what Loren and Alexei proved is that conflict doesn't have to be brutal. It just has to be honest. And healing makes for underrated A+ television when you give it the space to unfold. TLC leaned into it hard, because this was the first time in a while they had a couple who could anchor a whole mood without high-volume chaos. A story that didn't dip the minute it went quiet. A marriage that didn't crack every 5 episodes, but still gave us all the feelings. And fans responded not just with good numbers but devotion. They moved from casual watchers to people who cared about the outcome. That's fan gold. You don't just want to know what happens, you want to see them thrive. You comment support even on slower episodes. You root for stability. That's rare in a franchise like this. Loren and Alexei sneaked up behind the loudest storylines and stole the spotlight using emotional truth. And what's even crazier, they've never needed a public feud, family war, or explosive finale to do it. They just kept showing us who they were, and we kept choosing to believe them. And that may be the biggest twist of all. In a show built on chaos, the couple with the quiet chemistry won the long game. But don't get too comfortable, because what happens next could flip their nurturing glow into the show's next high-pressure crucible. Because when production finds something the fans trust, they always test how far they can push it. There's a myth that keeps reality shows running. That drama equals ratings. That louder means better. That if there's no tension, there's no reason to stay tuned. But it's not true anymore, if it ever really was. Because what the 90-Day Fiancé fandom is showing now, loud and clear, is that it isn't about spectacle versus silence. It's about truth versus performance. And yes, TLC has finally started to listen. The fans weren't craving less drama. They just wanted to feel like it was real again, and TLC heard it. Scroll through the comment sections on official clips, check Reddit threads, open your DMs. The same theme keeps popping up. If it's authentic, I'll watch, but if it's recycled chaos, I'm out. Viewers aren't numb to drama. They're numb to manufactured drama. And that shift is changing how TLC structures entire episodes now. A fight that once carried a whole storyline, now it's clipped short and followed immediately by a moment of genuine emotion, usually from Loren and Alexei. That's not a coincidence, that's data. Because fake feeling fights may spike engagement for 15 minutes, but emotional honesty builds loyalty. The kind that comes back next week and the one after that. Retention booster. Spectacle gets people to click, stability keeps them invested, and TLC is choosing investment over impulse. Andrei and Elizabeth's 50th argument? It might have trended for an hour. But Loren's quiet postpartum moment at the pediatrician's office? That stuck with people. Months later, fans still bring it up. Why? Because it meant something. Memes pulled from Loren and Alexei's most vulnerable scenes don't mock them. They celebrate them. That's rare. In this fandom, memes are usually ruthless. But not here. These moments aren't punchlines. They're rallying cries. One viral tweet read, Loren crying about being touched out with 3 kids. That's more relatable than any yelling match I've ever seen. Another, forget the fights, give me more real parenting panic instead. I've been there. Those kinds of reactions don't happen when people are passively watching for chaos. That's emotional investment. And for TLC, emotional investment is long money. Because even if a toxic couple breaks the internet once, fans won't stick around if they feel emotionally manipulated. Too much spectacle starts to look like a stunt, and nothing kills a live show faster than the audience thinking it's fake. We've all seen it. A couple clearly egged on by production. An argument that escalates too perfectly. A coincidental family blow-up right before a new season drops. None of it hits unless viewers are still emotionally with the people involved. And that's the quiet genius behind TLC's shift. They stopped prioritizing noise and started following where the empathy flowed. And that path led straight to Loren and Alexei, because here's the thing, people want drama, but what they need is resolution. Andrei and Elizabeth, drama. No resolution, just new arguments with old roots. The same emotional pattern so many viewers are tired of seeing in real life. Why would we want to watch it loop at home too? Loren and Alexei, conflict, fear, honesty, healing. It's not sanitized, just relatable. There's a difference. Retention booster, the formula isn't no fighting, it's fighting that leads somewhere. That's the oxygen audiences need to keep caring. TLC has access to every metric we don't. Completion rates, rage quit moments, clip drop-offs, they see how long you watch each segment. Did the phone lock after the third family dinner fight? Did views spike when screen time shifted to Loren sitting with her anxiety in a dark bedroom? They see it, and they're reacting live. That's why we're seeing more emotionally honest couples getting promotional priority. Newer pairs are being edited to show collaboration instead of just conflict. There's still mess, yes. But there's more mirror moments, more light between the chaos editing. And fans are responding, not just with views, but with support. Think about it. When was the last time a couple trending from 90 Day Fiancé wasn't trending because people were dragging them? Loren and Alexei flipped that script. Every time their story paused for a genuine conversation or a vulnerable admission, something wild happened. People leaned in, not out, because authenticity travels fast. And so does emotional manipulation, but in the opposite direction. The same way fans once stopped rooting for Elizabeth when her tears became too familiar and no resolution ever came. They started rooting for Loren when her tears carried weight and honesty. You could see the internal work being done. That matters, especially to an audience that's tired of seeing women exhausted for views. Elizabeth's conflict fatigue was shouted over, packaged, memed, minimized. Loren's fatigue was shown as a full experience. The messy hair, the slippery emotions, the days when even brushing your teeth feels impossible. No mansion drama, no fake baby shower tension, no wine throwing. Just a young mom saying, I feel like I'm disappearing, and I don't know how to recharge. And a husband, stunned, silent, present. That sticks harder than any airing of dirty laundry will. It's not that fans don't love scandal. It's that they won't stay loyal to heartbreak they can't believe anymore. Retention booster. Reality can be messy, but when it starts to feel made up, the audience taps out. So now, TLC's at a crossroads of its own making. They've built their franchise on tension, but the modern viewer isn't that easy to fool. Andrei and Elizabeth were lightning rods once. But lightning gets old when it tries to strike the same place a dozen times. Meanwhile, emotional rhythm, that slow, steady beat of real couples figuring it out, is suddenly driving the most talked about arcs without breaking anyone down on purpose. So what happens next? TLC isn't just shifting which couples get airtime, they're shifting what kind of couples get selected to begin with. Not perfect people, not boring characters, but emotionally complex people who actually change, or at least try to. And behind every casting change, every trailer re-edit, every cut-down scream fight, is this one simple pattern. Spectacle got them here. But stability is keeping it alive, and fans don't want passive anger anymore. They want choices, consequences, clarity, conflict with purpose. They want personal growth, not just ratings bait. So, if your story hits rewind too many times, you're gone. If your vulnerability leaks off camera and production's trying to hide it, you're the future. Because 90 Day Fiancé is finally learning the golden rule of reality TV in 2025. Don't ask viewers to relate to the plot, ask them to relate to the people. Next in Act 6, we're peeling back the emotional layers of Elizabeth's role as the silent mediator and why her fatigue became the biggest warning sign viewers couldn't ignore. Did TLC protect her, or did they quietly use her tears as transition points? We're going to the core of her exhaustion and how the fans' empathy slowly fractured under the weight of repetition. There was a time when fans called Elizabeth brave, balanced, holding her family together like thread between unraveling seams, the one who kept it classy while chaos swirled behind her eyes. For years, viewers rooted for her because they saw the labor, the awkward dinners, the fights that weren't hers to begin with, the way her face would freeze mid-smile the second a conversation shifted to Andrei. But lately, the support changed. Some fans once called her loyal. Now they're starting to wonder if it's just emotional survival. Because if there's one thing reality TV doesn't handle well, it's quiet emotional erosion. No screaming montage, no meltdown moment, just a slow, silent slide beneath the pressure of being the constant middle. And that's who Elizabeth became, the middle, between her husband and her dad, between angry brothers and family holidays, between production setups and her personal boundaries, always smoothing edges that wouldn't stay smooth for long. At first, we saw her as a bridge. By the later seasons, she felt more like a buffer, a sponge, absorbing tension nobody else would touch. And it showed, voice a little flatter, smiles timed tighter, confessionals that carried less conviction and more practiced empathy. She wasn't coming across as excited to be there anymore, she was simply enduring. Retention booster, it's one thing to be the calm in a storm, it's another to be the shelter that's slowly collapsing under pressure. This wasn't a season that broke her, it was a season that exposed how long she'd been breaking. Think back to the early seasons, Elizabeth laughed more, she clapped back, she had wide eyes and actual reactions. But somewhere between the third blowout argument at her dad's house and the seventh all-cast brawl over respect, the spark didn't just dim, it vanished. She wasn't performing anymore, she was managing. You could see it in the avoidance. The way she stopped engaging mid-fight, eyes darting down, changing the subject, letting Andrei speak even when his words made her visibly uncomfortable. The subtle backs of the hand over the face, the retreat into silence during family scenes that felt all too familiar. This season, fans didn't cheer for her, they worried about her. And here's the twist no one wanted to admit. The softest voice in the room eventually became the one carrying the loudest weight. TLC framed her as the nurturer, the wife stuck between a blunt man and a boundaryless family. Her identity became so tied to that narrative that any attempt to step out of it came off almost wrong. Fans noticed when she stopped taking emotional space, when her needs disappeared from the screen entirely, when her own story became background to everyone else's temper. That's not just editing, that's the toll, because being the mediator isn't a role, it's an unpaid job, and Elizabeth held it season after season. Retention booster. Audiences don't need explosive moments to feel impact. Sometimes the quietest ones, the tired blink, the held breath, say everything. Social media noticed long before TLC did. Posts stopped praising her diplomatic tone and started sounding more like worry. Elizabeth looks emotionally checked out this season. I don't think she even wants to mediate anymore. At this point, it feels like she's scared of saying the wrong thing to anyone. That's not healthy. You can literally see her spirit leaving her body during family scenes. Earlier seasons gave Elizabeth tiny victories, a wedding that mostly worked out, a baby storyline, a truce, even if temporary, between siblings. But by this point, the cycle was too loud to cover. The same shouting, different day, and she was frozen right there in the middle again. Viewers started pulling back, not because they didn't care, but because they didn't want to watch her numb out on television. There's an emotional math equation that long-term reality stars are forced into. How long can I play the same role before I disappear inside it? For Elizabeth, the tipping point came slowly. You could track it visually. The reactive, but babe, that's not fair became tight-lipped glances. The family dinners. No longer moments of resolve, just endurance tests. And the saddest shift of all, she seemed to stop believing the situation would ever really change. That's when the tone flipped. Even loyal fans, ones who had defended her from day one, started saying, I don't think she has anything new to give this story anymore. She deserves peace, not another season. And production knew it. So they shrank her screen time, not out of disrespect, but out of discomfort. Not because she wasn't valuable, but because her emotions stopped serving entertainment. When someone starts fading on camera like that, it's no longer compelling, it's painful. And TLC's not in the business of pain that fans can't laugh through. Retention booster, when the audience goes quiet, not because they're bored, but because they're uneasy, the story ends whether the season does or not. Even the music changed. Scenes with Elizabeth stopped getting dramatic build-up. She wasn't framed dramatically anymore, just passively, gently, like a ghost in her own story. And yet, what hurts most is this. The entire arc that once made her the heart of the chaos never let her out of it. When you're cast as the mediator, you're tragically expendable. Not flashy enough for clickbait, not confrontational enough for promo clips. Always on screen, but never the headline. She was created as the glue. But fans watched that glue start losing its stick, and TLC, they knew the camera might pick up what words couldn't cover anymore. So they did what they always do when something soft starts feeling heavy, they faded it out. Fans saw it happening too. Comments turned cautious. I hope she's okay off camera. She doesn't look happy anymore. Maybe quitting would be the healthiest move for her family. And when the audience starts rooting for your exit, not your glow up, it's over. Elizabeth never needed to scream to leave a mark. But sometimes the quietest pain, when stretched over too many episodes, becomes impossible to hide behind editing tricks. And now, the fans who once celebrated her grace are asking the hardest question. Was she being loyal, or did she just stop believing she could say no? There was a time when fans called him the straight shooter, the no BS guy, real to a fault. And for seasons, that's exactly how Andrei wanted us to see him. He was blunt, he was loud, he didn't do fake. He challenged everyone, everywhere, all the time, and audiences kind of respected it, until they didn't. Because at some point, the no-filter honesty started sounding more like something else. Control. Did TLC frame him this way, or was this always who he was, and fans finally got tired of making excuses? That's the question burning quietly at the core of his drop in popularity. Not just why he said the things he did, but what he meant when he said them, and how often the room fell silent when he was done talking. Because once Andrei flipped from bold to dominating, it didn't feel refreshing anymore. It felt uncomfortable. The exact moment the audience stopped laughing with him and started cringing at him varies depending on which fan you ask. But one thing is clear, he became too much, too aggressive, too defensive, too unwilling to bend. And over time, his stubbornness stopped reading as confidence and started reading like something else entirely: emotional rigidity. Retention booster. And when your strong personality starts making the room feel smaller, viewers notice. They stop calling it leadership and start calling it something closer to a red flag. Andrei's early appeal wasn't just his accent or bravado. It was unpredictability mixed with occasional vulnerability. He had a clear loyalty to Elizabeth, tried hard to provide, and never faked a moment on camera. But the same authenticity that won fans over at first started to drain them as it calcified into defensiveness. What began as a character trait started looking more like a tactic. Arguments weren't two-sided anymore. He talked over people, not with them. His go-to instinct when challenged: dismiss, shut down, blame. And when viewers noticed Elizabeth getting quieter, not engaging, not pushing back as she once might have, the reactions shifted. It became, is she okay? It became, why is she always walking on eggshells? It became, why does every scene with Andrei feel more like control than chaos? He wasn't the unpredictable one anymore. He was the inevitable one. Every room he entered, tension rose, every interaction, laced with disrespect, every dinner, a landmine of bruised egos and smoldering silence. And fans stopped buying the idea that this was just how he expresses himself. Because once a long enough pattern emerges, you don't need a villain edit. You just need a rewind button. Go back and you'll see it. Dinner after dinner. Scene after scene, snarky dismissals, loud declarations, minimal listening. At first, it felt like bravado. But by this season, it felt more like a wall, not just to the other cast members, but to the audience. Retention booster. You can shout for 3 seasons before viewers start checking the exits. And once they go quiet, you've already lost the room. Not every fan turned on him completely. Some argued he was misunderstood, or that he was simply frustrated by a dramatic family and overactive producers. Those people exist, but even his defenders began running out of steam. Because there's only so many times you can say, he's just being real before that realness starts to hurt the people around him. People who were once his defenders now said things like, I used to admire his confidence, now I don't know if he's just emotionally immature. It's not masculine to be loud all the time. His default setting is attack. That's not leadership, it's fear. Andrei didn't need a scandal to fracture his character arc. His scandal was his consistency, and when drama doesn't evolve, it becomes unbearable. Especially when fans begin seeing who suffers most from it. The minute Elizabeth's tone flattened, the minute her shoulders stayed tight around her family but even tighter at home, that's when audiences switched sides. Not against her, against him, not vocally, not in outrage culture hashtags, but emotionally, quietly, in the places where loyalty breaks but nobody hears it. This is where the Andrei brand collapsed. Fans stopped rooting for his dominance because it wasn't entertaining anymore, it was isolating. And TLC. They didn't cut him out, they didn't silence him, they simply gave him less room, less oxygen, less build-up, tighter edits, weaker musical framing. Andrei went from alpha energy to background energy, not because his personality changed, but because the emotion collapsed underneath it. The fun was gone, the stakes were stale, and for someone like Andrei, who built his entire screen time off pushing back, fans started wondering what he was pushing toward, because there was no growth, no reflection. No, I was wrong. Not publicly, not privately, not in confessionals, just volume, just repetition, just enough screen time to remind fans why they started tuning out, and that's all it took. Retention booster. Momentum doesn't die in public, it dies the moment the audience stops caring who wins the argument. Andrei wasn't always careless. In fact, some fans believe he carried responsibility for his family to a fault. Steady income, hard work, plans to move forward without waiting for validation. There's something admirable there. But admirable character traits don't protect you from becoming exhausting, especially when the other person in the frame looks like they've stopped breathing emotionally just to avoid another fight. That's what viewers saw, and that's why the energy shifted. He was never designed to be a villain, but when you strip away empathy from your boldness, there's only one direction left to go: cold. And Andrei's cold didn't shock viewers, it shut them down. He didn't get cancelled. He got paused by the only people whose opinion truly mattered: the silent majority of fans who no longer stayed for his segments, and the editors who read the analytics. TLC didn't change his story, they stopped telling it, and he never even noticed. Which brings us to Act 8, where does TLC go from here? When spectacle finally wears out its welcome and stability rises in popularity, the show has to make a choice. Keep pushing the loudest narratives, or build new emotional anchors from scratch. And the surprise twist? Loren and Alexei might not be the only couple now being groomed for center stage, so who's next? And how far will producers go to protect the formulas that still work? Stay tuned, we're heading into the real test of TLC's future. So here we are, one couple faded into silence. One rose from the middle of the show to the center of its soul. And TLC, the network known for its messy, chaotic reality gold, has somehow landed at a strange new crossroads. Is this a reset? Because if it is, one thing's clear. The show won't survive on volume alone anymore. And for a series built on shouting matches, last-minute weddings, and reality TV whiplash, that feels like a turning point. Let's be honest, 90 Day Fiancé isn't what it used to be, not just in ratings or episode structures or who's getting trailers. Something core has shifted, the audience tightened its standards, the internet got louder, the fatigue hit, and production felt it, so now they're testing something different. Breadcrumbs of empathy, emotional arcs that take longer than 2 episodes, domestic honesty that doesn't always end in collapse. Couples like Loren and Alexei being allowed to just be without constant sabotage. That's not a coincidence, that's calculation. TLC's real-time course correction. But don't mistake this evolution for a moral awakening. TLC isn't throwing out the chaos playbook, they're balancing it, diversifying risk, wrapping the loud in snippets, and giving the soft more space to stretch. It's why Elizabeth is being gently retired, why Andrei's volume is now B-roll, and why the screentime math favors Lauren's 3M mom breakdown over another shouting match at Chuck's barbecue. Retention booster. When chaos burns out your audience, empathy is the only currency that spends clean. And it's not just who's featured, it's how they're framed. Confessionals are changing tone. Edits are tightening around character development instead of confrontation buildup. Even promotional clips focus more on what someone felt than what someone threw. And slowly but surely, fan loyalty is shifting from the wild to the relatable. Because after watching years of emotional combustion, the fans figured out something production hoped they wouldn't. Not every fight means something, but vulnerability always does. That's why Loren and Alexei stuck. It's why fan pages about them read like support groups, not roast threads. Why single scenes of genuine exhaustion, from sleep training toddlers to battling postpartum depression, spark more conversation than dramatic confrontations ever did. And that shift has consequences. You can feel TLC evaluating who still fits the brand and who just doesn't. Some couples, sliding out with no closure. Others, getting trial arcs with emotional beats tucked between the chaos. There's a recalibration happening in the edit room, behind every teaser, through every Facebook ad and Instagram reel. And if you want proof that TLC knows this show needs to evolve, look no further than what they aren't saying. Remember Jasmine? Not her dinner fights or her infamous tears, not her spicy one-liners, though let's be real, they're unforgettable. We're talking about what happened off camera. The scandal TLC clearly didn't expect and still hasn't addressed. The leaked messages, the alleged betrayal, the phones, the paperwork, the showing versus the hiding. All of it exposed cracks not just in a relationship, but in the platform pushing it. Because for once, the drama wasn't just in front of us, it was behind the camera. The audience felt it. Real-world consequences, burnout, production meddling gone too far. And the fans, they didn't cheer, they gasped, they pushed back. They turned what could have been viral chaos into something deeper, a demand for accountability. That's the moment TLC realized this era of drama at any cost had finally hit its ceiling. Because this wasn't good content anymore, it was problematic risk on record. So what now? Loren and Alexei may never be your traditional franchise stars. But when the heavy scandal stories lose their luster, you don't just replace spectacle with silence. You replace it with stability, and that's what's happening. Stability is the new spotlight. Real marriages are finally outpacing fake meltdowns, not in shock value, but in staying power. Because people connect to emotion that isn't edited for tension, but trusted for truth. Andrei's dominance had limits. Elizabeth's silence became too quiet to ignore. Jasmine's turmoil broke the fourth wall, but Loren and Alexei, they're holding it down, with tears, laughter, exhaustion and scenes that make people feel seen, not exploited. They're not perfect. Sure, some scenes feel overly curated, some moments are clearly production staged. But fans forgive that stuff if the emotion still hits honest. And so far, it does. Which means TLC has a choice: double down on what the numbers tell them is dying, or pivot toward the audience that's smart enough to know when they're being manipulated. Retention booster: TLC doesn't need to cancel anyone, they just need to stop canceling emotional honesty. Yes, it'll always be a franchise built on dysfunction, but the dysfunction alone doesn't drive the machine anymore. Loyalty does, emotional momentum does. Moments like Loren whispering, "I don't feel like myself anymore," make people stay, not to root for failure, but to hope for healing. It's the one thing reality TV never thought we'd ask for. And now, it's the one thing that's keeping the most saturated franchise in cable alive. So what's next? More character, less chaos, more actual growth arcs, fewer endless loops, and likely more couples pushed out quietly, not because they yelled too much, but because they never changed. If this is TLC's reset, then Loren and Alexei are the ones holding the compass. But what happens when the next scandal hits production, and it's one they can't control? That's the story we're watching now. And trust me, it's already started.